I think Coda's law is bullshit. Anyone that in 2023, almost 2024, is still going around either A, claiming it's not and it's legitimate, or B, claiming that the crypto community embraces Coda's law, I think they're being disingenuous or just stupid. I think Coda's law, most reasonable people in the space have moved on from, 2-3 years ago.
Not a dividend.
It's a tale of two clans.
Now, your losses are on someone else's balance sheet.
Generally speaking, airdrops are kind of pointless anyways.
Unnamed trading firms who are very involved.
I like that ETH is the ultimate Ponzi.
DeFi protocols are the antidote to this problem.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chopping Block. Every couple weeks, the four of us get together and give the industry insider's perspective on the crypto topics of the day. So quick intros. First, we've got Tom, the DeFi maven and master of memes.
Hello, everyone.
Next, we've got Robert, the crypto connoisseur and czar of Superstate.
GM, everybody.
And today we've got a special guest, Samczsun, the white hat wizard at Paradigm.
Hey.
This is where you say something. Okay. And I'm Haseeb, the head hype man at Dragonfly. We are early stage investors in crypto, but I want to caveat that nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, or even life advice. Please see choppingblock.xyz for more disclosures. Okay, so Bitcoin just hit $44,000 or just below $44,000 from being in the 30s last week. So a really crazy run up in crypto markets. We were basically front page news once again. It's been a long time since crypto has been in the front page news in positive light. But once again, it feels like we're in the early throes of a bull market. And alongside that bull market, we now have ourselves in the curious position that it's hacking season again. And there's a lot more. I've been seeing a lot of stuff going around about people being targeted and hacks and scams and frauds and giveaways. And, I'm giving away free ETH. Send me 1 ETH back after I send you. This kind of stuff is going around again. And so I thought it'd be a great time to bring on Samczsun. So for those of you who do not know, Samczsun is probably the most famous white hat hacker in crypto. Tom, I remember you actually were at 0x when Sam discovered, I think, was probably one of the most legendary vulnerabilities in crypto history. Tom, do you want to describe how that played out?
Yeah, I don't know if that was your debut, so to speak, but there was a pretty gnarly bug in 0xv2 that Sam caught, and it was a approvals related bug, which is one of the scariest. Basically, the TLDR is it would have allowed anybody to create a fake 0x order on behalf of anybody who had used the protocol and basically drain any assets that you had allowed the protocol to trade on your behalf out of your wallet. And luckily, Sam spotted this, got in touch with us. I think we spent a whole overnight 24 hours thing trying to patch it, fix it, put out the upgrade. But that was my first introduction to Sam, which we were incredibly lucky to have had.
And that was one of the largest vulnerabilities ever discovered in DeFi at that time. So yes, it was a pretty crazy debut, and that's how I remember first hearing about Sam. Sam, I know that you're a very secretive person. I imagine being a white hat and a cyber sleuth and having a lot of enemies from the sort of dark side of the internet requires you to have really good OPSEC. But whatever you're willing to share with us, and for those of you who are just listening to the podcast, Samczsun is appearing here in an anime avatar. He has a voice changer, so he's the real deal. Sam, what can you share with us about who you are, where you came from, and how you got into the world of white hat hacking?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing security my entire life, and so all of my IRO friends know this. And years ago, way before I started doing crypto, one of them reached out to me and he said, there's this thing happening on this Ethereum thing. It's really interesting. You're going to love it. It's like some multi-sig, whatever, something or other. But I was like, that's really awesome. I'm sure I will. And then I completely ignored it for like half a year because I was busy doing other stuff. And I continued ignoring it until one day I was just so absolutely bored out of my mind doing non-exciting, not crypto things. And I was sitting there going, what could I possibly be doing right now that would be more productive than, I don't know, like watching YouTube or whatever I was up to. And I remembered, this Ethereum thing. And so that's how I got started. And of course, back then, there weren't nearly as many resources to get started in crypto security as there are now, right? Today, we have so many, there's blog posts stuff, right? There's YouTube videos. There even data pair auditing really easily. So any of these training programs or just the contest or code arena. So today it's really, really, really easy to get into security. Back then, you had maybe 1 or 2 blog posts about here's the top in Solidity vulnerabilities. But that's sort of why I got started. And so I was looking to what exactly was this multi-sig bug? What exactly was retency? What exactly was delegate call? And just slowly work my way up from there.
Very cool. And so now you work with Paradigm. You're I guess, white hat in chief or something. I don't know exactly what your role is. Security researcher, I guess, is probably what they call it. So what exactly do you do at Paradigm? Like, how do you fill your days?
Yeah, so I think of my time at Paradigm, mainly broken down into 3 parts. The first part, obviously, is dedicated to Paradigm itself. It would be quite embarrassing if Paradigm were to be hacked. I think I would actually fortunately I'm anonymous, so I can't just disappear, but I still don't really want to do that. That's like the last resort there. So obviously a lot of time spent considering how to protect Paradigm, how to protect our assets. Obviously we're also an investment firm. And so, the second part, chunk of my time is dedicated to figuring out how do we protect our portfolio companies. If they have security asks, if they need an audit, if they need some code review, if they need advice on non-crypto security, right? A few days ago, I tweeted out about these people going around threatening to, claiming they found a bug in, your website, and they would take it offline, they would DDoS it, and then they would say, okay, before we tell you what this bug is, please pay us like 5 ETH. And so understandably, if you're a first-time founder, you might be really scared of that, right? You might be going, what do I do? I got to pay up to figure out what's going on here. And so not necessarily crypto security, but I'm still there to help advise them on situations like that. Let them know that this is actually just extortion. They don't have anything of value. You can just like go on with your day. And then the third part of my time is mainly focused towards the community itself. And so whether that's finding bugs in other protocols or putting out these write-ups like I've been doing recently about these sort of security self-audits, really just figuring out what I can do to help further the security of the space itself.
So many people might not be as familiar with the crypto security world. And so in crypto security, there are 2 kinds of players generally. Well, there are many kinds, but the 2 main ones we like to talk about are what we call white hats and black hats. And a white hat is basically like a superhero. They are on the side of good. They're just out there to do the right thing, find bugs and protocols, and be helpful to the people who are trying to build useful things in the world. And then the other side is what's called the black hats. So the black hat hackers are people who are in it for themselves. They're trying to do harm. They're the supervillains in this whole story. And they're preying on civilians and trying to trick them into giving them money one way or another, or outright breaking protocols. So a natural question many people have when they're thinking about somebody like yourself who's a white hat, how does one decide to become a white hat hacker rather than a black hat hacker, given that many people realize that it's very lucrative to be a black hat hacker, especially when you have skills as good as yourself? Why do you end up becoming a white hat?
The big reason for me is basically, I think I was raised in an environment where, I was sort of taught that doing the right thing is more important than doing the thing that makes you more money. So I think I really took like the positive values to heart growing up. And so really the main factor I consider when I think about all of these biggest fights is not necessarily, I would be so rich if I stole, $500 million from this protocol. But I think more importantly, where did that $500,000 come from, right? And more often than not, it's going to be from these individual families, parents, grandparents, people who, for better or for worse, might have put their entire life savings in a DeFi protocol. And not to excuse them and say that was like the right choice, right? Like a lot of these times, people dabble their entire life savings on a DeFi protocol, maybe not the most responsible choice, but the fact of the matter is that is their livelihood. And so, just thinking about victimizing just like these large swaths of the population, really decimating their future like that is just something I can't live with. And so it really isn't about the dollar amount on the final payout, as it were, but just the fact that, I was destroying so many lives. It's just something I can't live with.
Yeah, Sam, you're really like an anime hero when I hear you tell me.
He's calling from his secret underground bunker right now. This is the Fortress of Solitude we're seeing in the background here.
Yeah, the virtual reality laboratory. On that note, Sam, total tangent, but what is your favorite anime?
Well, I think over the years, as I've sort of matured, my tastes have evolved. I think actually, funnily enough, most recently I've been watching Eminence in Shadow, which is just like this totally, it like takes all the tropes in Anime to the Extreme. The plot is about this guy who just wants to be super fucking cool, and he has no idea what he's doing, but he's just like, bundling around the plot, and like everything just happens to work out. When actually, as it turns out, I think apparently one of the more popular crypto projects managed to go to collab with him, which is insane to me. I didn't realize that in a major anime studio would be open to that, but I think that just speaks to how awesome the anime is. Go launch Minutes in Shadow.
Okay. Fair.
It's a very thoughtful answer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So speaking of white hats and black hats, I wanted to get into the meat of the story. So last week we had Ogle on, Cryptogle, which Sam, I know you know well. And he was discussing with us the Kyber hack. So for those who are just tuning in, there was a massive hack that took place over a week ago now into a DeFi protocol called Kyber. And so KyberSwap, they're a on-chain DeFi DEX, basically, and DEX aggregator. So they were hacked on the order of something like 50 million plus that was stolen from the protocol. So the hacker was kind of erratic. He was sort of, initially last week, he sent over a message saying, hey, everybody chill out. I need to get some sleep before we start negotiating. And he was kind of telling everyone, hey, back off. I better not have any trouble. Otherwise, if you guys want to see this money. And so then on November 30th, which is about a week ago from today, he sent an even more unhinged message. This was like right around the time that our last episode got published. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the message that was sent by the hacker. And this is probably the strangest message I've ever seen a hacker send to a protocol.
It is the wildest. It is 6 out of 6 on the unhinged scale.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. So now I'm switching over to the hacker's voice. Okay, so I'm going to skip over some of the stuff, but basically he says, okay, here are my demands from the protocol. I offer a treaty. What I demand is complete executive control over Kyber, the company. I want temporary and full authority and ownership over the governance mechanism, KyberDAO, in order to enact legislative changes. I want all documents and all information related to the company and protocol formation, structure, operation, revenues, expenses, profits, assets, liabilities, investors, salaries, etc. And I demand that you surrender all of Kyber, the company's assets. On-chain and off-chain, including shares, equity, tokens, partnerships, blogs, websites, servers, passwords, code, social channels, and any and all creative intellectual property. Once my demands have been met, I will provide the following. Executives, you will be bought out of the company at a fair valuation. You will be wished well in your future endeavors. You haven't done anything wrong. A small error was made, rounding in the wrong direction. It could have been made by anyone. Simply bad luck. Employees, under a new regime, your salary will be doubled. It is understandable that many current employees will want to leave regardless. The employees who don't want to stay will be given a 12-month severance with full benefits and assistance in finding a new career, no questions asked. Token holders and investors, under this treaty, your tokens will no longer be worthless. Is this not sweet enough? I'll go further still. Under my management, Kyber will undergo a complete makeover. It will no longer be the 7th most popular DEX, but rather an entirely new cryptographic project. LPs, these are the people who had their money stolen. LPs, you will be gifted a rebate on your recent market-making activity. The rebate will be for 50% of the losses you incurred. I know this is probably less than what you wanted. However, it is also more than you deserve. This is my best offer. This is my only offer. I require my demands be met by December 10th, otherwise the treaty falls through. Additionally, should I be contacted by agents from any of the 206 sovereignties, it means countries, concerning the trades I place on Kyber, the treaty falls through. In this case, the rebates will total to exactly zero. Kyber is one of the original and longest running DeFi protocols. No one wants to see it go under. To assist with this transition of leadership, I may be contacted on Telegram, and he drops his Telegram handle, which is Kyber Director. Thank you. Signed, Kyber Director. So this, I have in all my years, to be clear, we still don't know who this hacker is. We have no idea who this attacker is. Maybe people in the war room might know, but this is the fucking craziest message I have ever seen from a hacker. Reactions.
Well, I mean, I will just say that the hacker voice sounds a lot like a great investor I know called Haseeb, and I've never seen Kyber Director and Haseeb in the same room, so I'm not quite sure what to make of this, but maybe we should get some of the FDI on it or something.
This does actually sound like the kind of language I'd use in an ultimatum, so I can see the connection.
Yeah, this is like a very sadistic form of like a bear hug. They're trying to do an LBO of Kyber by acquiring the assets first and then taking over. I mean, I don't know how they also expect this to work. They want to run the company while also being anonymous criminal. And how are they going to take over the off-chain assets? Like, the whole thing doesn't actually even make any sense. Like, the demand is kind of nonsensical on top of just being totally insane.
Well, it has a lot of parallels back to Avi Eisenberg and Mango markets, where, the hacker or market manipulator, whatever, so to speak, was of the opinion that it was legitimate market activity, that there was nothing illegal about it, and that it was all fair game to take all of the assets from the protocol and try to negotiate from a position of strength, or at least self-perceived strength. And obviously, this hack was not perpetrated by Avi, but it sounds very similar in the response, where it says, it takes the opinion, oh, this was, fair game. This was the LPs, were market makers, and I, simply traded profitably against them. And coming from this, position of wisdom and, success, I would take that even further and say, I want to take over all of Kyber in a legal fashion. It's so perplexing to me that like somebody has this level of both delusion and self-aggrandization. I mean, this hacker is nuts. And I think in their head, they might think that there's a shot that Kyber, takes them seriously, whereas anyone, in the outside world, immediately, sees the, preposterous nature of what they're asking.
I was going to say it's a good deal for the employees, like 12 months severance and doubling their pay. I'm like, the employees at Kyber might be like, hey guys, I think we should maybe work for this hacker. Yeah, clearly there's some weird grandiosity, like kind of personality disorder going on with this guy. Like some people were saying like, okay, well, I think he's trolling. I think this is a joke. This didn't read to me like a joke. It was so specific. And I don't know. I mean, so Sam, I know that you're in the war room, and we got a sense from Ogle last week that maybe you're constrained in what you can say, given that you might be in the room where this stuff is happening. Anything you can share with us about how this is being perceived by the first responders?
I mean, yeah, well, you've absolutely nailed it on the head that I am definitely a bit limited, out of respect to the process. I don't want to be disclosing information that isn't public, but I think, like most people on Twitter and just in the general, media sphere, yeah, like the demands don't seem particularly reasonable. And if I were the hacker, I would assume, I know that he went quiet for a handful of days, no response, and suddenly comes out with, these demands. I mean, even if Kyber were to, start making progress towards those, like how exactly you hand control over those off-chain components to someone who they absolutely doesn't want to be doxxed? It just doesn't quite make sense to me. If the hacker is being genuine, and I'm sure he's probably listening to this podcast the moment it comes out, but if he is being genuine, he's more than welcome to reach out and clarify how he wants to do that. But I'm assuming he's not, and so we just have to kind of proceed like, he isn't. And I think another big part of the problem here is basically setting the understanding that this actually isn't what we want to allow in crypto in the future. And so, what Kyber does here actually has, it is actually very meaningful down the line, right? And so we want to make sure we're treading very carefully to make sure we're not setting any bad precedents for future projects and future hackers.
Right. I think Kyber, it seems like an obvious non-starter to have this hacker take over Kyber. I mean, don't have no idea how that would possibly work. We'd also have to dox the hacker, right? Like in order to take over a company, people have to know who they're transferring the shares to. The thing is, like, this person is clearly quite sophisticated in the sense that the things they're asking for are the kinds of things you would actually ask for if you were taking over a company. So this is not like some child or just some, somebody who has no idea how companies work, which is what makes it so interesting, is that clearly this person is a black hat. Clearly they're also a business person, and they have some understanding of how a deal like this might be manufactured and executed, but they don't have sufficient understanding to realize what a crazy thing this is to propose. Or maybe they do, and maybe I don't know, maybe they say, okay, well, great. If you're willing to go through with this, please transfer over the ownership into this shell company in the Seychelles that nobody has ever heard of, and that is, 7 layers nested deep into the structure of other shell companies that you're never going to get to the bottom of, and this thing is going to make all the decisions. Maybe that's how this thing turns out. I would be so fascinated just to know, if you say yes, what happens, right? What's the next thing? I don't think there's any chance in hell that anybody would say yes to this, but it's such a fascinating alternate timeline. So anyway, Given all this, it sounds like from the voices I think we're hearing from Kyber is that probably this is going to be a no. Victor Tran from Kyber Network tweeted out, "No one fucking cares about Kyber users like we do. You deserve the best. Message tomorrow." And then they kind of wrote some general stuff about how Kyber is trying to help alleviate some of the pain for the folks who had their money lost in the hack as they're continuing to work through things with the recovery. And apparently there was also some funds that were moved into Tornado Cash from the KyberSwap exploiter. So it does seem like the KyberSwap exploiters more or less moving money around, and it doesn't seem like this money's coming back home anytime soon. It's an unfortunate situation, but it is very crazy. Sam, I don't know. I know this is not your domain. You're more on the kind of smart contract vulnerability side. Just give us an understanding, though, when something like this happens, how does a war room come together, right? What's the mechanism by which, okay, some shit went down. How are you and Ogle and all these people kind of summoned to the right place? And how does the thing come together that the response gets organized?
Yeah, so I think the moment anything happens on chain, there's always a handful of people that, find out immediately. They have bots running, they have alerts running, they have monitoring. Sometimes they have more monitoring than the projects themselves, which is probably not where you want to be in the future, but it is where we're at right now. Then these people will reach out to people they know that are typically, that people you might consider the first responders, such as myself or Ogle or any of the other white hats. And then from there, we sort of, I think everyone in the white hat community sort of understands what the correct proposition of a worm is. That is to say, it should be, orchestrated by the project. They should have files saying what happens. It should be very exclusive. So you shouldn't be inviting just everyone, and everyone they know. And suddenly it's like 100% room and you're not really sure where all this information is going. And so it does happen, sort of organically in the sense that the moment the project finds out, I think everyone basically advises them, you should make your war room if you don't have one. You should invite people that you think are trustworthy. Obviously, everyone thinks they're trustworthy. And so the project has to make some choices. And then from there, once you're all gathered in the same place, it tends to follow pretty steady rhythm. I mean, at this point, I think everyone basically knows go out there, make sure anything that's possible is paused, make sure you've identified the vulnerability, make sure you've done what you can to alert the users. On the tracing side, that's not my area of specialties at all, but people like Palin Monahead and Zach XCT, they'll go out there, they'll piece together all the little clues. So it really does work like a well-oiled machine once everyone is there. And then you just have to get the money back.
I think most people in crypto, especially who are building smart contract-based applications or DeFi protocols, they all wake up in a cold sweat having nightmares that Sam DM'd them about something happening in their protocol. Like that is the touch of death is Sam sends you a DM about, hey, I saw this thing happening on chain.
I mean, you want
exactly.
this, but
yeah. Just from your perspective, Sam, what is that like? Because I imagine this is kind of a very common occurrence for you, but for many people, this is when you DM them is the worst day of their lives.
Yeah, I mean, there's really two forms that DM can take. I think the one that everyone prefers is, I'm trying to message them about something that no one else knows yet, right? Or hasn't been exploited. And in that case, it is still pretty heart-wrenching, but at least you know that your money is safe if you sort of follow best practices. The one that's not as good, and unfortunately the one that's happening more often now, is I or someone else message them because something has happened on chain. And so now it's not a question of, what can you do to not sure you don't lose anything, but, how much have you lost and what do you do next? And that is that, I mean, I always acknowledge in every war room that I'm here to provide advice. I'm here to provide an objective, so from an objective viewpoint, what I think might be the right thing to do, but I'm not the one in the hot seat, right? I'm not the one who's staring down the barrel of, a 9-figure loss, and I will never know what that feels like. And so I can only imagine it must be hell. Like I wouldn't want to subject my worst enemy to that. That must be terrible.
When you're on sort of the prevention side of things, when you're looking for vulnerabilities, how do you decide where to focus your time? Do you just go on DeFi Llama and sort by TVL? Are there sort of signs that sort of, activate your spidey sense that like, oh, there might be an issue with this protocol? How do you sort of prioritize things?
there's like a lot of different places I get sort of new coverage from. DeFi Law was one of them. Go Ether ESA scan used to be one of them, but now the sort of verified contracts page is not, it's just not a great view into like what's happening on chain anymore. It's just way too noisy. People messaging me about phase that they're working on is also another great source. And so really just gathering, signals from all these different places and then sort of, yeah, it's hard to say what I prioritize by. I think it's a combination of, does it feel like it's a very complex thing to try to do? Does it feel like it's going to have a lot of money in it? What are they nice about it? Like sometimes, people are not the nicest, and then I'm less inclined to put in time to it, but generally people are. And so it's really a, multitude of factors. I mean, I think that's pretty much it.
So you've seen almost everything possible go wrong on chain at some point in your career. What do you do on chain? What does Samczsun actually do on chain? Do you like trade NFTs? Do you sit around and LP in protocols? Or do you just like, look, I'm going to never touch any of this stuff with my own money?
Oh my God. Well, so before I joined Paradigm, I also didn't do much. I really hadn't found so many bugs in protocols at the time. I think, security has gotten a lot better since, when was that? Like 2020 was when I joined Paradigm. Security's gotten a lot better. But at the time, having been the one to find all these issues and all these protocols, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm using MBFuse states. I'm going to keep my money in these and I'm going to keep my money in DAI. Paradigm is a pretty strict compliance policy. So nowadays, even if I wanted to do stuff on chain, it's pretty tricky to do it in any meaningful capacity, which is fine. I still am pretty conservative about how much risk I want to take, which is what makes it all the more ironic that having been very inactive on chain, speaking of which, actually, side tangent, there's these addresses that people keep linking to me because someone bought an ENS that looks like my handle. And all these supposed like chain analytics companies will like tag me on Twitter and they'll be like, this multi-million-dollar address linked to Sam has been doing these trades. Follow us for more intel. And I'm just like, if you're gonna get me wrenched for, owning like a multi-million-dollar address, like at least let me own a multi-million-dollar address first. I don't want to get wrenched for having, that's like 100x less than what you're claiming. Anyways, it's just really ironic because having made an effort to like not really participate too heavily on chain, there's only like maybe 5 or 6 protocols I'm actually involved in purely just by like holding a stablecoin or whatever. And one of them happened to be like the Yearn USD like yield bearing token, which, as of a few months ago, maybe like half a year ago, no longer bears any yield because it got hacked. So yeah, I guess, even when I try to avoid it, I can't avoid it. It happens to everyone.
Well, let that be a lesson to you. Never touch any of this stuff. It's all just poison for your bank account.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of all this, actually, there's another interesting story in the news that kind of relates to black hatting and white hatting, which was there was a French court that was trying somebody. There were a couple of exploiters who had hacked a protocol called Platypus, which is a AMM on Avalanche. And the attackers claimed that they had ethical intentions, that they were white hatting, even though they were taking some of the money for themselves, but they were giving back most of the money or something along these lines. And a French court acquitted them. And the judge basically described sort of analogized what these people had done in hacking the smart contract as taking something from a machine that gives more than it should give. So it's kind of like, okay, well, this vending machine kind of had a bug in the vending machine, but like that's not the same thing as, breaking the thing open, or that was sort of the analogy that the judge gave. So there's been a bunch of arguments about this, and that basically is this French court upholding the code is law meme that is often thrown around in crypto, which is that because this thing is code, that should supersede what any other legal analysis might otherwise define as being the contract between two people. Curious for you, Sam, having looked at the situation, given that you are a white hat, what did you think about this this French judge acquitting these two folks who exploited Platypus?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think code is law is bullshit. Anyone that in 2023, almost 2024, is still going around either A, claiming it's not and it's legitimate, or B, claiming that the crypto community embraces code as law, I think they're being disingenuous or just stupid. I think code as law, most reasonable people in the space have moved on from 2-3 years ago. And so just want to get that, out there right off the top. I think as for the actual, case itself, not a lawyer, don't want to pretend like I am. I think there was a huge discussion about this in the 8 Security Telegram, which I participated in. And it was a nice 3+ hour, I feel like, flame war where we just kept going in circles. I probably didn't help in that. So, not to pretend like I'm innocent here, but I think what someone did point out to me was that this happened in a criminal court, and the judge, I believe, said something like, you can try pursuing this in a civil court and you probably will be successful. And, people pointed out the nuance here that, it might not actually be desirable for any crypto asset to be tried, prosecuted, whenever the time is in criminal court, and that is to be settled in civil courts. Again, not a lawyer, so I don't quite understand the nuance here. I think, generally speaking, though, I would like to see some justice carried out here. Which court aside, it seems a little ridiculous just from pure intuition that exactly who did it. For sure they didn't have good intentions, despite what they might claim to the contrary. And you just have to walk free like that. You've had the justice system, the perpetrator on the silver platter, and if they walk away from it, I think that very, very clearly sends a message that, at least in France, this is fine. And I don't think that's a message we should be sending at all.
And was that the prevailing view of security folks in the Ethereum world?
I do think there's 2 major camps here. One of them is this view, and the other camp is that actually there shouldn't be, we shouldn't necessarily embrace code as law, but we also shouldn't, basically run the daddy whenever something goes wrong, and that we should try to settle it, a more crypto native way.
Do you mean what is it? Is it Claros courts? Is that the crypto native way?
Hey, maybe finally a use case. Well, someone filed a Claros court case against the Kyber hacker, and they were like, we should, what was the phrasing of it again? They were like, we need to stop them from using all the chains or something. So, I don't know, maybe finally a use case.
All right. So yeah, we got to stop running to our French daddies when things go wrong. Okay, got it.
Yeah, but I mean, to be clear, I'm not discounting that the other camp, other opinions here. I think they're looking back to what crypto was originally meant for, which is this idea of being a truly neutral, basically independent, financial system. I can see where they're coming from in the sense that if you welcome third-party intervention into your system, sometimes then you're going to have to welcome third-party intervention at other times when it doesn't suit you. And so actually we just shouldn't welcome it at all. I don't necessarily agree with this, but I can see where they're coming from. And so, just to put a bow on that answer, I think that's sort of where the two major camps lie.
Robert, what's your take on all this?
My take on all of this is that I still think of the entire ecosystem as being in the first inning. So maybe the second inning, so to speak, of figuring out the social, legal, contractual, moral, and economic conditions of how on-chain systems should operate. I mean, this debate is only going back to really beginning at the DAO hack. So 8 years ago is the real first origin of this. And I feel like we are going to be debating these things for another 80 years. And I think there's going to start to be consensus, emerging over time, but it's still incredibly early. Just the knowledge about how security even works on chain is a relatively new field. And so, I think the standards that exist now are still evolving quickly. These are not ossified expectations. On the last episode, we were talking about the expectations around hack voluntary recoveries and returns of funds. And these are new being less than a year old standards. The standards have not ossified. And my personal take is that, I don't think the current operating conditions for on-chain systems are good enough. I don't think they're safe enough. I think that as a user, this is still a minefield for the most part. You're still taking risks that are extremely hard to calculate when you use any smart contract created application. And, I don't think where we're at today even it's good enough. I just don't think so. And I think there's a lot of improvement left to go before systems are good enough for end users from a safety and security perspective.
Sam, you've been around the space for a while. And I mean, earlier you said, hey, security has improved a lot since 2020. What do you see as those main areas of improvement where standards in the industry are just so much higher than 3 years ago? And what do you see as sort of the frontiers of new attack surfaces, new types of vulnerabilities? What is sort of that vanguard?
I think it's important to disambiguate between security and what I would consider, sort of like the leading projects in sort of Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, all the more, I would consider reputable chains, and then like everything on the SC. I think there definitely feels like there's this completely separate universe of projects that keep getting hacked by these very simple mistakes, like not having a function be private or not changing a constant everywhere in the code, or just like things that I just want to exclude from the conversation because I don't think they actually represent what well-intentioned actors are doing as far as securing their projects. As far as like, these good actors go, we don't see many civil ranches anymore. We don't see, in fact, a lot of the bikes that I would have read when I first got started in crypto security in that blog post for like top 10 solidity vulnerabilities would not be applicable at all today. And I think that's partly due to just better educational resources. I think that's due to more accessible security resources. I think it's just the prevalence of security contests themselves, right? Where you benefit from the sheer numbers of people looking at your code compared to a audit firm, which would assign, maybe like 2, 3, 4 people max. I think all of these things have done wonders for security. Obviously, it hasn't been enough because even though we've raised the bar to finding a bug, these bugs still exist. Case in point, Kyber. And so I'm actually not really sure what specifically the next step is. One thought I had was basically with all of these hacks that we're seeing, it's not as if these hacks are, being executed using inside of knowledge, right? It's not like you had to have the admin key or you had to have push access from the code to like instant backdoor. These were sitting in plain sight for some definition of plain sight. And so part of me wonders if there's any way we can, again, use the power of numbers to our advantage, where even though there might be 5 white hats looking for a bug in the next fiber, there's actually 500 white hats looking for that same bug. So the question I'm wondering is, how do we incentivize that behavior beyond what we already have with bug bounties and audits and contests and all these other things that we dropped over the years?
So I know that one of the initiatives that you've been very involved in, Samczsun, is this thing that you call the Security Alliance. And we've seen a bunch of initiatives that you've instigated from your position into trying to improve the overall security environment for Ethereum, as well as just, smart contract-based projects across many different chains. There's a bunch of stuff that you guys have come out with recently, such as CL 911 and this crisis handbook. Can you kind of talk us through what's the Security Alliance? Where did this come from? Why does it sound like, a league of superheroes? And what exactly are you guys doing that you feel like is moving the needle on Ethereum security or just smart contract security generally?
Yeah, the idea actually is to give it sort of the vibe of, like a league of superheroes, like a group of just like people who are not self-interested. They're working for the benefits of the public, for the greater good. And that is really the focus of what the Security Alliance is trying to do. And so, as you said, we launched CO 911, we've launched CO drills, we've launched the CO handbooks. And the goal of all these projects and, future ones that we're working on is to be able to put aside, individual interests and personal motivations and actually do the things that matter. actually do the things that will move the needle in the space. If you try to convince some audit shop or a handful of white hats or, whoever else, like you should set aside, minutes, hours, days of your time every week to, on a purely volunteer basis, do this frontline help desk service, right? And by the way, it's going to be branded under my company. I think that's a pretty hard sell to anyone who doesn't work for the company. Because it's why are we doing this for you, right? There's always questions of what the motivations are, who's benefiting, all that fun stuff. And so, let's just set aside the question of who is benefiting. It's going towards this neutral organization. It's going towards, the crypto ecosystem, as it were. And let's just focus on the fact that what we need right now is this service where people, if they need help, if they have some bug that they can't get to the right person at a protocol, which, we've had quite a few of these reports where people can't get to the protocol and they need to report a bug. Let's make this service available for them, right? Let's not make them pay for it. Let's make it so that if they need to contact a white hat, they can do it really easily. Same thing with seal drills, right? In 1.2, we have solved the problem of how do you train people on security. We just give them the training, right? But in 1.3, if you were to say, hey, please pay us $20,000 and we'll run the training exercise for you. Well, now you have all these now governance debates about why should we fund your grant, or what is the proposal, what are the deliverables, etc. You have to do all these DAO politics. If some for-profit company was trying to do this, people might be oh, are you trying to sell me a service? Is this gonna be what's the catch here? And actually, there's no catch, right? The whole point is there's no catch. What we're trying to do isn't to profit off this. It's not to sell your service. It's not to, it's not to attach hidden strings to it. We just want to make security space better, right? And that's something I think everyone in security and everyone in crypto in general can stand behind. They just needed something to stand behind that wasn't allied with any particular company they might dislike, or any particular, group or person, whatever they might dislike. That's the purpose of the Security Alliance.
That's awesome. And tell us a little bit for projects. Let's say I'm a founder. I'm at the very beginning of building up my protocol, and I don't, I'm not an expert on cybersecurity. What should I be looking for? What should I be doing? What should I keep in mind as my project scales? Tell me about how I should think about seal drills or the handbook or seal 911.
Yeah, so I think there's this vision that over time, what we'll be able to provide is, from the very moment that you get started to when your protocol is live on mainnet, resources that will help you as a founder or developer make the best choices for your protocol from a security perspective. But until we get there, I think the same things apply as they've always have, which is to say, I think the crypto has always had this spirit of being open to all. And so maybe not necessarily gatekeeping on you have to be a senior developer to start writing Solidity, but whether before or during your development process, learning about, best practices of development, right? Learn about all the different ways that Solidity might have foot guns, make sure you're writing tests as you go, make sure you're unit tests or fuzz tests or property tests, make sure you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing. Once you're done with development, or even during development, make sure you're engaging the security community, right? Whether it's through an audit, through a contest, through just reach out to a few people, see if they're open to a peer review. And then once you do deploy, we have systems in place like bug bounties, right? And so I think that the advice there hasn't necessarily changed that much from what it used to be. Really just continue following those best practices. But my hope is that over time, as we continue to mature, into 24 and 25, and as the Security Alliance continues to develop these public goods that, do significantly move the needle in a way that, for an individual researcher or individual auditor, it's just hard for them to gather the resources or the mind share to do that. I'm hopeful that for a future developer, much like when I first got started in security, there weren't any resources for me. I'm hoping that in 24, 25, there will be resources that will just be, 10x, 100x better than what they are right now. And that's something that we can work on building. That's a really awesome vision. And, I've heard some of the stuff behind the scenes about how the Security Alliance has come together, and it's inspiring. In crypto, people often have this view that
look, we're kind of out in the state of nature, and we don't believe in the state or the government, and as a result, a lot of times public goods aren't really provisioned sufficiently. And it very much reminds me of almost like police, in that one can imagine like, well, if you're a pure anarcho-capitalist, you might say like, well, can't people hire their own private security? Why do we need government-backed police? This seems like a private good that can be provisioned totally fine by private markets. But smart contract security shows you that, look, when you have enough things that are vulnerable, then it's kind of like just having it's like having rats or like having ants that just create an infestation. And when they know they can survive, then people an ecosystem gets created of black hats and people who are going around, rampaging and holding things for ransom and DDoSing websites to convince you to pay them or something. And the more that there is a unified front from the entire industry, from all protocols, that one shows people that, hey, using stuff on chain can be safe. It's not always safe, but if you use the right kinds of protocols with the right kinds of teams that are reputable and using best practices, they can be safe to interact with. And if you're a black hat, you're not going to have a good time. You're not going to get your money out. You're not going to be able to make away with these goods. And most things that you find are going to be secure. It's a great way, I think, to strengthen the proposition of moving more and more stuff on chain and making it more trustworthy for users. So huge hats off. And especially after having Ogle on last week, I kind of feel like, hey, in holiday season, it'd be nice to sort of give a salute to everybody who's working on security on the white hat side, because what you guys do is so important, so valuable, and so often is underappreciated.
I just wanted to jump in and just comment that, like, I think it really is about the community and the ecosystem and the way that their life's structured. Like this, I couldn't have done this by myself, right? And I can't do this by myself. It really is a community effort. And so I'm also really thankful to everyone else involved, from, all these different auditors putting in their time to help triage these issues. Nascent themselves directly worked on the first copy of the handbook. That was a lot of time that they put in, without traditionally compensated in any way. It really was for the greater good. Paradigm letting me do this itself, this has been a huge time sink for the entire year. And, letting me sort of, I don't want to say neglect by other duties, but maybe letting that third pillar that I talked about eat up a little into the first and second pillars. So it really is, I think, a huge team effort. And I'm really grateful that people in crypto are open to that and not just sort of, closed off in their own silos, trying to figure out how to maximize for themselves.
Speaking as somebody that, created a protocol many years ago, I oftentimes have this experience where, people tell me, oh, you've contributed so much to space, it couldn't exist without you. And I don't necessarily feel like I'm a hero. But when I look at Samczsun and I look at the people that are the white hats in this industry, you're the people that I idolize, that, I think are heroes, that, make this possible for everybody else. And so I think it's hard to overstate, how much good you've done. I think there's a lot that people don't know about how much good you've done for, protocols and for the industry. A lot of this stuff doesn't always, reach CoinDesk. It doesn't always reach crypto Twitter. And, I can state, very clearly that you've done an astronomical amount of good for the industry.
Wow. If this avatar could blush, I would be butting right now.
We'll add some blush and posts to your anime avatar. So I talked earlier about how we're entering into a bear market, and I think that likely means we've already started to see an escalation in
bull
phishing,
market.
Scamming. Sorry, did I say bear market? Bull market.
Yeah,
it's a bull market.
We're entering into a bull market, and we've already seen an escalation in cybersecurity incidents. So I think this is also a good time going into the holiday season for getting people to start thinking about their own personal security. And Sam, I think you'd be kind of the perfect person to ask. You released some stuff earlier that I saw through the Security Alliance about best practices around Twitter security, email security, Telegram security. Can you just, obviously there's a podcast, and there's people with a variety of different technical backgrounds, and probably many people here don't even use Telegram. But can you just give like a general overview, random person in the street who's part of the crypto world or interested in the crypto world, how should they be thinking about what are the easiest things you can do to up-level your own personal security to make sure that nothing bad happens to you this holiday season?
Yeah. Well, look, I think there's some really easy table stakes things that everyone should be doing. I think if you're not already using Password Manager, you should be using Password Manager. if you are currently using a password manager and it's called LastPass, you should be using a different password manager. I would recommend something like 1Password, for example. But, don't feel bad. Even if you use a LastPass, it's so good that you are using a password manager. It's just they don't have a great reputation or track record. So you should probably try find a different one. I think if you're currently using SMS 2FA on anything, that is maybe by far the most common way people in crypto who are high value targets, by far the most common way they get hacked is they get SIM swap and all of a sudden everything they have is hacked because everything they have is checked at the phone number and it's so easy to just do a password reset. So go through, and I'm going to be putting out a guide on this in a few days, but, go through your email, your bank accounts, your exchanges, your social media, any of these accounts where if you just sit down for one and go, it would be really bad if someone could impersonate me there or see all the stuff I've stored there since, when I first made the account, like all of your past emails, all of your stored pictures, all the messages you sent 5 years ago. Like if that would be bad for an attacker to have, get rid of SMS 2FA because if you're in crypto, that is not safe for you.
Let me pause you there because I think you're using a lot of acronyms that people might not be familiar with. So just for everybody, because I think this is probably the most useful public service announcement we can give. So 2FA stands for two-factor authentication. It's when you have a second way to log in. You get a password and then it's like, okay, we're going to text you. Using text or SMS is not a secure way for most people to use second factor authentication. Many, many, many people in crypto get their phone numbers taken over through what's called SIM swapping. So SIM swapping is when somebody calls your network provider. So if you use Verizon, use T-Mobile, whatever, they'll call Verizon, they'll call T-Mobile, they'll say, hey, I am Tom Schmidt. I lost my phone or whatever, blah, 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 but this is really me. They find some information on you online that can corroborate, oh, here's my name, here's my address. Maybe they have your social security number from one of these old data hacks. There's a billion of them now, so everybody's social security number is no longer really that secret. And they impersonate you and they take over your number. And by taking over your number, now they can log in as you because they say, oh, I forgot my password. It says, oh, really, is this you? Answer this text. They answer your text. They get into your email. Blah, blah, blah. This is SIM swapping. It happens to many, 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 many people in crypto.
Happened to me twice.
Twice? Wait, hold on. Wait. Happening once is understandable. How did it happen twice?
After it happened once, I kept my number at T-Mobile and I said, put on port protection, put on, a full lock on transfers, like don't allow this to transfer again. And I think someone was bribed as an internal employee and whatever protections I had were removed and I was SIM swapped twice.
That's insane. Well, okay. So
agree.
Yeah. All right. So one thing that I would recommend is if use Google Fi as your phone provider because Google Fi cannot be SIM swapped because it's tied to your Google account. But in general, never use SMS. If you can ever use anything besides SMS as your second factor, always, always, always do it because SMS is just riddled with problems. Anyway, sorry, Sam. I wanted to stop you there just because I know that this is probably the most important piece of advice that most people have never even heard of.
All good. And actually, I'm really glad he did because I wanted to actually follow up on Robert's point a bit and just, if you don't mind, dive a little into the nuance, not too deeply into what actually happens in a SIM swap. And it's actually I'm really happy that you mentioned your experiences because it actually is a perfect example for how there's two layers to SIM swapping. Right. The first part is your sort of run-of-the-mill. As an attacker, I know I have no special access. I know, no extra special information. I just know that my target is Tom Schmidt. I guess we're all going to become Tom today. And, I'm going to call in to a T-Mobile store or a Verizon store. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm running super behind. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I really need my phone back. I lost my SIM card. I lost my phone. I need to get back ASAP. And that poor, store rep has no idea what's going on. He doesn't work in crypto. He's just there's this poor guy in Christmas, no less, right? It's the season of giving. And so, he has no idea what's happening. So you might have a note on your account, but that's totally up to whichever support representative that is handling the case, whether or not they want to look at it. Right? There's no formal process in the system that says, click this button only after you uploaded the passport in our systems that verified it, right? Like that doesn't exist. And so the first half is basically, can you, without any prior context, social engineer a security agent into handing the account over, right? And this applies, if you bought, a plan directly from AT&T, from Verizon, from, Mint Mobile, whatever, right? Google Fi almost certainly protects against this. There's just no support agent you can talk to if you're dealing with Google. And so there's no one to fish or no one to social engineer. But to Albert's point, Google Fi actually doesn't protect against the second type of attack, which is someone actually bribes an insider or compromises an insider at the company itself, right? At AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile. And because at least in the United States, every cell carrier goes through one of these major, infrastructure providers, your account is in their systems. And if you bribe a T-Mobile employee, as Robert Simsoffer did, no amount of notes, no amount of locks, none of that will matter. It doesn't matter if you're with T-Mobile directly or you're with Google Fi or any of the other, what we call MVNOs, which is mobile virtual network operators, I believe, or number operator. It doesn't matter because you're in their backend and that employee has full access to that system, right? And so that's why one just recognize that Google Fi and other, cell providers that are sort of designed to be more secure than the average cell provider for consumers will protect you against social engineering, but it won't protect you against an insider. And if you're also a high value target like Robert is, it might be worse bribing an employee with, say, $5,000 to get access to your phone, which potentially will unlock your Coinbase account worth millions of dollars. And so actually, the most important thing you can do is, the most important thing you can do is actually completely, if you have an option to remove your phone number from the account, remove it. If you have it set as the two-factor authentication method, remove it. Because just assume that if you're above a certain net worth, and that could be, as high as 6 figures, right? Or even mid 5 figures, because it doesn't actually cost a lot to bribe these employees. So if you're above some certain net worth, just stop relying on your phone number, because a motivated attacker will get access to that insider if they want to. And then there's no level of pressure you can do to solve that. Got it.
Anything else that you think is kind of low-hanging fruit for people to improve on their security?
Yeah, I think the last one is just get a hardware wallet. Again, same concept. If you're above a certain net worth and you don't have a hardware wallet and you have all your funds in a MetaMask or Rainbow, whatever, or Uniswap, whatever wallet you're using these days, that is just such a big risk. There's a reason that everyone recommends hardware wallets, and that's because it guarantees that even if your computer is fully compromised, the computer has to send a request to the hardware wallet to perform an action, and the hardware wallet will not lie to you about what you're doing. So as long as you're reading the string or whatever display on your wallet is telling you, and you see that action looks suspicious, you will protect yourself. God forbid. I mean, there's always that 0.001% chance that someone finds an ODA in the firmware but that raises the bar for you to get compromised through any sort of phishing attack exponentially. So if you don't have one yet, get a hardware wallet.
Great. Okay. Fantastic advice. If people want to learn more about the Security Alliance or just learn more about your work, where should they go?
Yeah. So my Telegram is always open for DMs. My Twitter account is not, because I hate Twitter DMs, but ping me on Telegram, send me an email. There's a page on my website with other contact methods, but I probably won't be looking at those. And I'll, depending on, what the question is, what the request is, I'll prioritize and respond to them in order, but always happy to chat. And if you have questions on security, always happy to answer them. Just reach out.
Awesome. Well, Sam, it's great to have you on. You're an absolute hero and a legend in the industry. You've got a multi-billion-dollar rap sheet of hacks that you have stopped. So it's an honor to have you on, and thanks for all the work that you do for everybody.
Thanks for having me.
All right. That's it for this week. See you, everybody.